He was asked whether he would kill again. His answer? If I could get away with it? Probably. They say silence in a home can be peaceful, until it stretches on for days. On a cold January morning in 2008, snow blanketed the sleepy town of Newry, Maine. The houses stood like frosted dolls in a landscape of white. But one house on Sawyer Road wasn't quite like the others. It was quiet, too quiet. And behind its doors, a horror was waiting to be uncovered, one that would haunt the state forever. The house belonged to 53-year-old Kim Cates and her 11-year-old daughter, Jamie. Kim was a loving mother, a nurse, the kind of neighbor who waved every morning and sent cookies during the holidays. Jamie was bright, funny, and full of life, a sixth grader who loved Harry Potter and wanted to be a veterinarian. But on the night of January 27, 2008, two boys knocked on their door. Only, they weren't boys. Not anymore. Stephen Spader, 17, and Christopher Gribble, 19, had formed a so-called club they called the Disciples of Destruction. It sounds like something out of a teenager's journal, but what they did was anything but juvenile. It was cold, calculated. They wanted to kill to feel what it was like to take a life, and they wanted to do it together. Armed with a machete and a knife, Spader and Gribble broke into the Cates home in the middle of the night. No motive, no personal grudge, just thrill, just violence. Kim and Jamie were asleep in their beds when the intruders entered. The attack was sudden, vicious. Kim was hacked to death with the machete. Jamie was stabbed repeatedly, left with her throat slit, but somehow she survived. Bleeding, broken, traumatized. She clung to life until rescuers arrived. It would take multiple surgeries, months of therapy, and years of emotional recovery. But Jamie would live, and she would testify. The details of the crime were so brutal that even seasoned detectives were shaken. One officer said it was the most senseless and savage crime he'd ever seen. Blood covered the walls. The sheets were shredded. The floor was soaked. Spader later boasted to friends about the murder, describing it like a scene from a movie. He kept Kim's wedding ring as a souvenir. He smiled in his mugshot. Why? Why would two suburban teens with no criminal history do something so monstrous? In court, the answer was chilling in its simplicity. Because they wanted to. Spader said he loved killing, that it gave him a rush. Gribble, who was homeschooled and socially isolated, described the attack with a disturbing detachment-like reading from a grocery list. And here's what haunts people the most. There was no real trigger. No drugs, no poverty, no abuse. Just the thrill of power, the control, the desire to kill for fun. Both were sentenced to life in prison without parole. During sentencing, Jamie took the stand, her small frame shaking but her voice unwavering. She looked her mother's killers in the eye and said, "You tried to kill me, but I survived. You don't win." That courtroom was dead silent. Some jurors cried. But the story doesn't end there. Years later, Christopher Gribble underwent a psychological evaluation. He was asked whether he would kill again. His answer? If I could get away with it? Probably. Cold, calm, smiling. There are killers who murder for rage, some for revenge, some for profit. But Spader and Gribble murdered for one reason: to feel what it was like. And that's what makes this case different. There were no warning signs, no cries for help. Just two seemingly ordinary young men who looked into the dark and stepped in willingly. So the next time you drive down a quiet, snow-covered road in rural New England, and you see a house with no lights on, no footsteps in the snow, just silence, ask yourself, what happened behind those doors?